Hello, students. Welcome back to your history class. Today is Friday, and this is the last part of notes. We will complete the notes today. So, over the weekend, you can sit and complete your notes going through all the videos of the week. Okay. So, we were learning about the methods of payment and business organization. Now, Muslims had developed a sophisticated method of payment and business organization by introducing the letter of credit and bill of exchange. Okay, like nowadays we have check and draft. In those days, they had letter of credit and they had a bill of exchange. It is regarded as one of the greatest contribution of the Muslim world to the methods of payment and business organization. The traders and bankers, they use these mode of payment to transfer money from one place to another or from one individual to another. So this was used to transfer money from one place to another or from one individual to another. Because we saw the trade route, it's not always you have so much money lying with you every time. Correct. So we saw there was trades between India, China, Europe, so Russia, Scandinavia. So possibly there were times when they did not have money, so they would give a letter of credit. And a bill of exchange was a bill that stated what exchange took place. Okay, so the traders and bankers use these modes of payment to transfer money from one place to another or from one individual to another. The widespread use of commercial paper freed the merchants from the need to carry cash everywhere. Okay, and so made their journey safer. If they carried so much cash all the time along with the goods that they had to sell, then they would be at a greater risk. So the widespread use of commercial paper has really helped the merchant from the need to carry cash everywhere. Even the caliph used these letters of credit to pay the salaries or to reward the poets and musicians. Islam did not stop people from making money provided certain prohibitions were imposed. The prohibitions that were imposed by Islam are interest bearing transactions were considered as unlawful. Even today, if you look at a Muslim, if you know about their religion, you will know they never have interest income. None of them will live on interest income. They consider it as haram. Second is money obtained by illegal means should not be kept. It is harm for a Muslim. Again, you should not obtain money by illegal means. In fact, I know quite a few of my friends who are Muslims, and they really, follow these 2 points a lot. Learning and culture. For religious scholars of Islam, knowledge is derived from Quran and the model behavior of the Prophet. They devoted themselves to writing tafsir and documentary Muhammad's authentic hadith. Sharia is a law which governs the relationship of Muslims with God through rituals and with the rest of the humanity through social affairs. The Sharia provided guidance on all possible legal issues within the Sunni society, though it was more precise on questions of personal status such as marriage, divorce, inheritance, and commercial matters or penal constitutional issues. So Sharia, it provides possible solutions or the way one should live in a Sunni society. But it answers more questions, it refers to more of personal problems like marriage, divorce, and inheritance than commercial problems like constitutional or penal issues. Okay. Before it took final forms, the Sharia was adjusted to take into account the customary law of the state on political and social order. So before Sharia was finalized, it also took into account the state laws and social orders. When life had become increasingly complex with urbanization was increasing of trade. which led to the formation of 4 schools of law in the 8th and 9th century. So because of urbanization, because of a lot of trade happening, lots of ideas and cultures were now exchanged amongst people. Now people started observing how other cultures were living, how other people are living, how to do things in a different way. Because of this, lots of complexity increased in the society. Not everything was accepted by everyone. And this led to the formation of 4 schools of law. They were Maliki, Hanafi, Shafi, and Hanbali. Each was named after a leading jurist. Then Sufism came. Sufis were a group of religious minded people in the medieval Islam. They sought a deeper and more personal knowledge of God through asceticism and mysticism. The more society gave itself up to material pursuits and pleasure, the more Sufis sought to renounce the world and religion God alone. So, as people, these Sufis, they were not materialistic in nature; they were very spiritual. So, as the society started to have more materialistic pursuits and pleasure, at this, at in the same proportion, the Sufis, they were looking at ways to renounce themselves from the society and world, and only pray or live for God alone. So Sufis used to have musical concerts to induce ecstasy and stimulate emotions of love and passion. They believed in uh, you know um, they believed in praying to God through love. They said they were in love with God in its purest form. So Bayazid Bistami, who was an Iranian Sufi, he was the first one to teach the importance of fana in God. That means submerging yourself in God and forgetting everything, just you and God becoming one. Rabia of Basra, a woman saint, preached that unity with God can be achieved through an intense love for God. Sufism is open to all. So, Sufism was not only Muslims or an Arab can do. Sufism is open to all, irrespective of religion, status, gender, and to it started to become a challenge or a threat to the orthodox Islam. Okay, now let's look at the influence of Greek philosophy and science in the field of education. In the schools of Alexandria, Syria, and Mesopotamia, Greek philosophy, Greek mathematics, and medicine were taught along with many other subjects. Translations of Greek and Syriac books to Arabic by Christian scholars became, started in the Umayyad and Abbasid caliphs. This translation work became a well-organized activity. A huge library, come Institute of Science, that is Baik al-Hikmah, was set up in Baghdad, where the scholars worked. The works of Aristotle, the elements of Euclid, and the Ptolemy Alchemist were brought to the attention of the Arabic reading scholars. During the same period, the Indian works on medicine, astronomy, and mathematics, they were also translated. Okay, and when they reached Europe, it aroused an interest in philosophy and science. The study of new subjects prompted critical inquiry, and it had profound influence on Islamic intellectual life. Scholars and philosophers started to pose wider questions on Islam, and they started to provide with fresh new answers. Okay, now we'll talk about Al Qanun fil Tibb, that is a canon of medicine. Ibn Sina, he was a philosopher, a doctor by profession. Ibn Sina's medical writings were widely read. The book Al Qanun fil Tibb is written by Ibn Sina. It is a 1,000,000-word manuscript, which includes a list of 760 drugs which are sold by pharmacists of his time, and note of his own experiments which were conducted in hospitals. This book points to the importance of healing through dietary regulations and influence of climate and environment on health and contagious nature of some diseases. This book was used as a textbook in Europe, where the author was known as Avicenna. It is believed that Umar Khayyam, a well-known poet and scientist, had read this book just before he died. In medieval Islamic societies, fine language and a creative imagination were among the most appreciated qualities in a person. Adab forms of expressions included poetry and prose, which were meant to be memorized and used when occasion arose. Abu Niwas, who was of Persian origin, he broke new grounds by composing classical poetry on new themes. So he started to compose poetry on topics like wine, male love, celebrating pleasures that were forbidden by Islam. So by this time, the Arabs conquered Iran and Pahlavi was in decay. A version of Pahlavi, known as New Persian, with a huge Arabic vocabulary, soon developed. Rudaki was considered the father of New Persian poetry, which included new forms such as short, lyrical, poem, and quartet. A rubai is a 4-line stanza in which the first 2 lines set the stage, the third is a finely poised line, and the fourth delivers the point. The subject matter of rubai is unrestricted. The rubai reached its zenith in the hands of Umar Khayyam. During 11th century, Ghazni became the center of Persian literary life. Mahmud of Ghazni gathered around him a group of poets who composed anthologies and epic poetry. The most astounding was Firdausi's Shahnama, that is, Book of Kings. The Shahnama is an epic 50,000 couplets, and he took 30 years to complete this work. It is a collection of traditions and legends which poetically depict Iran from creation to the Arab conquest. It has become a masterpiece of Islamic literature. The catalog, Kitab al-Firist. Now we'll talk about the catalog. We have spoken about Shahnama up till now. So we're talking about so many books over here. Shahnama, then we spoke about Al-Qanun fil Tib. I want you all to find a picture of these books and next to the picture write about these books. This would be a nice activity for your notebook. Okay. So, Kitab al-Firist. This is a catalog of Ibn Nadim, who describes large number of works written in prose for the moral education and amusement of the readers. The oldest of these collections is animal fables called Kalila wa Dimna, and it is the Arabic translation of Panchatantra. The most widespread and lasting literary works are the stories of the hero adventures of Alexander and Sindbad, and those of unhappy lovers known as Majnu or Madman. The 1001 Nights is another collection of stories told by a single narrator, Shahrazad, to her husband night after night. The collection was originally in Ind-Persian and it was translated to Arabic in Baghdad in the 8th century. From the 9th century onwards, the scope of writing books expanded and started to include biographies, manuals of ethics, history, geography. For rulers and officials, history provided a good record of glories and achievements of a dynasty, as well as examples of the techniques of administration. Al-Rubuni's famous Tahqiq Ma Lil Hind, that is History of India. It was the greatest attempt by an 11th century Muslim writer to look beyond the world of Muslims, of Islam. Okay, I think we finished. So I think we'll continue this in the next class. Architecture of the Islamic world of the 10th century. We start from here and finish the entire notes next class. Till then, stay home, stay safe, take pictures of those books and write down about it next to it. While you're doing notes, inside your notes, do it like that. Don't do it double time. Okay. Stay home, stay safe, take care, and keep learning. Thank you.